No problem.
There we go.
All right. So we are recording. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Dan. I guess we'll start with just our monthly market stuff. If you want to start there, or would you rather start with presentation this month? Where are you at on your screen?
I was just gonna say my what I normally go over. I don't have anything too drastic to share, and a lot of what my presentation is, it's kind of like a broad state of the market using TerraPeak. So what I had been doing, just like very quickly, very informally, I more formalized that, and I went really like wide and as deep as I can. 2 years of history we get with TerraPeak. So maybe if you just want to share yours, and then I'll show like my present, because that kind of like that's what mine would be.
Sounds good. Um, so earlier on in the month, I personally was seeing some upticks in like some of my middle era stuff that I was selling just specifically. I was hearing from people that they were seeing a number of pretty strong sales in WotC stuff, in their graded cards specifically. Some things kind of flatlining a bit after them kind of tracking it and seeing it go down each month, and then other things actually going back up. That was a bit earlier in the month. Um, my sense from the past couple of weeks, a number of people have told me it's been quite slow randomly. I don't know. It's I have not been I've been like traveling and doing a ton of work outside of Pokemon. So I haven't actively been bidding and following the prices like the last 2 weeks. So I don't want to give misinformation on those 2 weeks. That's literally what I'm just hearing. I don't know if you've seen shift at all from the beginning of the month to the end of the, I don't know how quick,
I think
it's
anecdotes are way overvalued and way over extrapolated.
they certainly can be. These were
Yeah.
from a couple of like big people who sell a ton.
Mm.
Just some interesting data, but yeah, I mean, my overall sense, and particularly from being engaged early in the market, is there's a lot of hot things. There's a lot of things that are sort of like speculating. There's a lot of like quick movement, price movement on certain things. I'm seeing from sort of every area, English, Japanese, um, and I'm sure with the amount of knowledge on the screen right here, there's probably a number of you guys could shout out data points or things you've seen where you've kind of seen like interest like 30, 40, 50%. I've had cards that have doubled in the past month, and there's just like suddenly more interest. So clearly there's people out there who are maybe finding out about some of these middle era stuff, or sort of getting excited, or want to speculate or invest in. I mean, we can speculate on sort of what their reasoning is, but there's certainly people exploring, it feels like, pretty much everything right now. I guess I haven't really been following like things like Top Soon and Cardass. I feel like that stuff maybe has been a little bit slower overall, at least for me, but those are very um of course it's a super broad market, so it's like uh I, for what it's worth, those are my impressions. I don't think they're worth it. Take them with I think a grain of salt is a little too little, but
Yeah.
maybe a pinch of salt.
5 pound bag of salt, something like that,
Uh,
maybe somewhere in there.
but yeah, let me turn it over to you, Dan. And I will say, as you guys know, I've been specking pretty hard and going into a lot of like Disney stuff and Star Wars stuff and other sorts of things. That the Disney stuff has really been booming. In particular, I'm seeing a lot of new people, a lot of new names that I hadn't seen before. And then in different Facebook groups, a lot of new kind of people interested, engaging. There's still just a lot of heat, everywhere. A lot of money slushing through this, and as you guys know, I'm doing financial analysis. Not, I think a lot of you guys know I'm doing financial analysis for a company now, mainly around real estate analysis. But there's been some interesting data coming out just about how much money is still sort of flowing in the system, and how it hasn't really impacted assets yet, and I think we can probably apply that to the card market and to the Pokemon market too. There's just a lot of money, slushing through the system, looking for places to park, and I think we see that with every kind of new release, both in Pokemon and Marvel and Star Wars and Disney. There's just a lot of money kind of slushing about these non-sports markets, at least for now. If that shifts and changes, I feel like there's more now, and there's quite a bit more bullishness now than there was a year ago. These things can change really suddenly, but that's my overall impression.
Yeah, and I guess it doesn't hurt for me to share my anecdotes. It seems like they've been pretty similar for a while now. Very broad, diverse market, some things up, some things down. If I had to pick out some of the hottest categories, I would absolutely still say Japanese PSA 10s, many of them going internationally, primarily China. And then like Ultra Modern Sealed is still doing pretty well. We're still kind of in that weird scenario where we're like a booster box drought of sorts. I mean, Scarlet and Violet came out at a pretty healthy, strong price, and it's been slowly trickling down since then. Evolving Skies is still doing its thing, and a lot of the recent boxes are still fairly strong. Whether the reprints are never
What is
coming.
Scarlet and Violet at right now?
It's somewhere in the 110-ish range, I want to say. Let me just pull it up so I'm not
strong, despite kind of prices obviously on the singles coming down.
Yeah, it had the whole, I mean, some people are happy, some people are unhappy about the lack of 1 per 2,000 pack pull rates on certain products. But as of right now, it's 114. So yeah, 110 to 120 range is where it's been kind of hanging out. But
that's very strong.
Yeah, still kind of unsure whether we're going to get massive booster box reprints of all the sets from the past 2 years, or whether they're just going to do them in packs, or really hard to say what's going on there. Every time I've been offered sets, it's been at like 120, 130. It's not been at like my normal 8650, 9650, anything like that. It's been very small amounts dripping through and very limited quantities. So maybe, I mean, Mason makes some great videos about maybe these things are just being put out through Pokemon Center, and PK does a lot of speculation on it too. But yeah, I think there's some good channels out there like Danny Phantom and Pokemart that talk. They have much bigger accounts and they deal with distribution, and they talk about what they hear from their distribution all the time. But yeah, my anecdotes, for what they're worth, mostly flat, up in certain areas, down in others, but overall pretty flat. And I will show actual data from eBay that kind of supports that feeling. So let me get my screen shared. If and when anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand, or feel free to just drop a message in chat if you need me to elaborate on anything. There's going to be kind of a lot. There's going to be kind of a lot here. So I'll start by showing you my methodology. My source is Terapeak for all of it. Mason said I was able to get 3 Scarlet Violet base for 105 each last week. So I guess you could say I'm swimming in product. Yeah, absolutely. It's, I mean, $10 below market, not having to ship it, not having to pay 15% fees to sell it. I mean, you can at least make a little margin there, but it's rough out there right now.
It's a lot of product for 2 stores.
You can still get 12. I can still get 12 per week, 84.50 Charizard UPCs, but I see them selling on Facebook groups for like 75 each, 80 each, like cheaper. So I was doing 12 a week every week for the past couple months, and I stopped now because it's like I can get them cheaper through Facebook if I want them.
It would be so awesome if we just knew how much of that was printed versus how much of, like if we could know how much of this stuff is just totally like demand, sort of like where the hype, where the attention is, versus because that's a fascinating product, the Charizard UPC. People being so sure, or not, some people being very confident for good reason that like that product is going to do extremely well, because it's Charizard and because products, and then it's like, well, we go through a period where like everything else booms incredibly, and that stinks and goes from 125 to, and it's
Yeah.
super fascinating.
like
that
no
Like
matter
that
what it is, too much
you
supply can, yeah, like supply matters for sure.
or or it's very investor speculative driven, and there was enough supply initially that it scared people, made people uninterested, and they sort of moved on, and then that has sort of a ripple effect into collectors. Who knows how the psychology sort of how all these things work, but it's amazing how quickly the emotion and sort of the sentiment around that, and in my opinion, it could dramatically shift back. Like it would
I
not
think that's
stun me if
what
those were
will
like
happen.
200,
Like,
those could be $250. Like as soon as the product in this environment, in my opinion, as soon as like there's some that it gets to that point where it's like starts to creep up, it could explode up.
because
And
people
that's
don't want it. Like people don't want it at
yeah.
80. They want it at 120 before it
And that
goes to 200. And then it might like, it,
and
yeah, it
that's
might just
and
happen
that's
quick.
why
Like,
and that's why I call this stuff, it's just gambling, and it's super bubbly, but it's and not sort of and it shows you, if that's true, right? I mean, it shows you one, I think that frankly, collectors can also be affected by excitement and by like what other people think are cool and what's expensive. It's not just like investors or people trying to make money are affected by that stuff. I think collectors are also, when you see something expensive, you want to collect it more too, and hold it. It's more exciting to have an item that's expensive or that other people like, as a collector too. But I do think that it's very interesting that we're still in sort of this market where, and we've seen it in so many places, and we've seen it in so many things over the past few years. I mean, I remember NFTs, like watching Top Shot, for anyone who was around for sort of the Top Shot experiment. It was like worthless, incredibly valuable, right? And then a slow sort of, you know, kind of downward with occasional huge drops. And it's MetaZoo obviously is a fascinating thing, to sort of watch the kind of emotions and the psychology around a new sort of thing, and a stonking, and it's amazing, it's terrible, I'm gonna be rich, it's worth nothing, everyone get out. It's amazing to sort of um kind of try to figure out, where is that sort of line, that sort of like sustaining line of more stable pricing, over the really long period that will sort of exist in that. And I one thing you've said to me, and I'm a big believer in this, is, one way to protect against the downside on a lot of that stuff is to really get in at before hype, get in at very attractive low prices, have distributor, connection where it's like, well, I'm getting it at such a good price here that if it stonks and phenomenal, and if it doesn't, I basically break even, or even make a little bit of money, depending on where I'm getting it. That approach to this type of market just really um, your potential upside, and really minimizes your potential downside. Rather than sort of chasing that hype, or chasing that FOMO. But it's interesting. But I'll let you jump in, Dan, to your presentation, or if you want to talk about anything
yeah,
I said.
I'll um I'll get my TerraPeak shared. Make sure I'm sharing the right thing. So can you see TerraPeak now? You
Yeah.
should be able
Am I
to.
freezing, Dan, at all? Or is
You were
that on your end?
freezing. Your video looks frozen right now. You were chopping a little bit, but the audio was staying mostly good. I don't know if you're trying to talk
Okay.
now, but okay. Yeah, you were frozen for a minute there. But anyways, let me I'm just going to show you really quickly my methodology. I did quarter by quarter as far back as I could, and right now I'm just showing you TerraPeak, the source for my information. For anyone unfamiliar, anyone has this. I don't believe you have to have a store anymore. When you log in, it's this research tab, TerraPeak product research, and you can set last week, last month, all the way out to 2 years, I was doing custom. And like, this is Q1 2023. Once I'm done showing you how I did it, just in case you want to replicate it, I did my select TCGs, my select terms. If you care more about something niche, something I didn't cover, I just want to make sure you have the tools to replicate it if you so desire. But yeah, you set your dates in here. As of right now, this search that I'm showing, it is all of eBay. You can see right here, it is all of ebay.com. So in Q1 of 2023, there were 2 million Pokemon items sold with an average sold price of $38.77 for a total sales of $81.2 million. And obviously, without context, the guts of my presentation will be the context, and it will be TCGs pitted against each other in singular TCGs over time. But yeah, that's the general gist of it. What I was doing for this presentation, for the sake of this, I did do some sports cards. So obviously in Pokemon, you can see there's 2 million listings on ebay.com in the search range with the criteria I put in. Only 7,000 of those are in the sports category. Trying to like weed out all the plushies, trying to weed out all the stuff that isn't as applicable. I went right to, for the collectible card games, I went to Toys and Hobbies. And you can take all of Toys and Hobbies if you want. You click just Toys and Hobbies and then apply. But I actually went right down in on collectible card games. So you can see of the 2 million listings on all of eBay for Pokemon, 1.6 million of them are in collectible card games. And what that entails is boxes, cards, lots. It's literally all of Pokemon cards pretty much. Sealed boxes, graded cards. So yeah, that's what I was looking at. If you're going through and you're taking a lot of different data, one thing you want to be sure that you do, I don't know why I'm stuck here. There we go. Make sure you lock the filters. Because if I were to change Pokemon for Metazoo right now, it would get rid of the category that I selected. And it sometimes it would get rid of the dates that I selected. So it took me a little while to figure out that you could lock the filters. And now I could go seamlessly from Pokemon to DBS to Metazoo, whatever it may be. But yeah, looking at Pokemon alone in collectible card games, $40 average sold price, 64 million in sales. So I think that covers all I needed to show. I'm going to stop the share very quickly. I'll actually check out the chat too. I'm very close to 20K feedback. Yeah. How much is the Patreon to learn the plushie market? Okay. So no direct questions, just some commentary and memes. Let me get the other tab shared. That's not the right one. Where are we? Sorry, I have so many. Always have way too many tabs open. You should be seeing now state of the market 2023 to 2024, a Google sheet. And a lot of numbers all at once. I always apologize preemptively for how many numbers. I know it's a lot to hit you with all at once, but we will make it through this. I will try to get your bearings set for you on what we're looking at here. So row 3, as you can see across the top, row 3 is the individual IPs. Where it says Pokemon, that is clearly just Pokemon, pretty straightforward. If it's in italics, that means it's like a subset of Pokemon. So when I searched Pokemon, it came up with 77.4 in Q3 of 2021 gross sales. This one is Pokemon PSA, Pokemon CGC, Pokemon BGS, Pokemon Booster Box. So I looked at Pokemon with a finer tooth comb. Most of the other IPs, I did do that for Magic as well. In hindsight, I kind of wish I hadn't, because you can see the sales numbers are so low for graded cards. But anyways, if it's in italics, that means it's a subset of like the main branch to its left. And what I did here, right now you're looking at all the raw data, so it's kind of a lot. I do have some actual charts too that we'll look at once we're through the meat of the raw data. But yeah, if you look at Pokemon alone, if you want to just look at column B, column A gives us the quarter and the year. So quarter 3, 2021 is October to December. Sorry, quarter 4, 2021 is October to December, January to March. I mean, the normal calendar quarters is what I split this up in. And yeah, if you look at Pokemon as a whole, one thing I wish I had been doing this back to 2020. Imagine having captured this from 2018 through 2019. I dug and dug and dug. It might be out there somewhere. I just need to try harder for next time, but I will try to go further back, because if we could have captured the bubble, boom, whatever you want to call it, would have been amazing to do. But as you can see, for the data that we have, we peaked in Q4 of 2021. I speculate, I mean, I don't know for certain, but I speculate that we would have actually peaked somewhere earlier 2021. I don't think late 2020 would have quite been the peak, but yeah, unfortunately, we just don't have that data because Terra Peak only goes back 2 years. And as I do with all my presentations, this will be like a living document. I will go ahead in each subsequent quarter, I will update the data. And if and when I'm able to tap into any resource that gives me prior data, if and when anyone knows any resource that can give me prior data, please send me a link and I'll go and I'll do the extra work. And this is a live document that you find in the, this is the drive folder. You can see that I got to buy some more storage because I'm almost full. But yeah, this is the drive folder that we all have access to. It's this most recent one. It's sorted by last modified. So state of the market right here is the file we're in. But yeah, I think it was interesting to see by the time that I had data coming in, CGC had already overtaken BGS as kind of the second in gross sales volume to BGS in Pokemon, at least. And again, it would have been interesting to kind of see that develop and see exactly when that happened, what quarter it hit. But as for the data that I have, you can see PSA cards account for roughly 25%, 20 to 25% of Pokemon sales in total in the collectible card games category. Booster boxes trail behind that, and you can see PSA, CGC, BGS graded cards. You're getting to a third to a half of total Pokemon sales in the CCG category. Obviously, the four things that I looked at were the major three grading companies and then booster boxes. One thing you can't do, you can't search Terra Peak with no terms at all. Because one thing I wanted to do, I wanted to search the collectible card games category as a whole, but unfortunately you can't do that to see like what percent of that was. But yeah, that's kind of the breakdown for Pokemon. Again, if anyone has any specific questions, but the general trends you can see, we peaked in late 2021. And we've been down since, as we've been saying. I think generally we've been saying we've been fairly flat for about like a year now. We've been saying that. Well, as per this data that we have from Terra Peak, the last 4 quarters, pretty flat. I mean, 10% fluctuations either direction, slightly less than 10%. I mean, if you say the average here is around 62. We're within like 5% plus or minus. So the past year, whether you're doing PSA Pokemon, CGC Pokemon, you can see a notable decrease though. So that's where you get kind of interesting things when you split the same data. If you're looking at Pokemon as a whole, well, it looks normal, looks pretty flat. PSA is pretty flat. CGC is taking a notable hit. And then BGS is more flat, a little bit of a wider variation than Pokemon as a whole, but yeah, a little more flat. And maybe, I mean, there's those theories going on out there about BGS black labels potentially being easier to get, whatever it may be. Maybe that's why they're ticking up right now. And another thing that I did, average sales price. So I have the same data, and we will, there's a lot of categories we're going to go through down at the end, but I'm trying to get you all like understanding what you're seeing in Pokemon, and then we'll scroll down through and we'll touch on every TCG a little bit that I covered. So yeah, Pokemon average sales price in the category, it's come down in the same time frame. Well, this peaked, I guess, a quarter earlier, and it's kind of been down starting 2022. But then since we started 2022, it's been in that same plus or minus 5 to 10% range. It's been pretty flat, with PSA graded Pokemon pretty flat as well. It's actually pretty interesting. 95% of what I sell in my store is graded Pokemon cards, and probably at least 80% of those are PSA graded ones. My average sale price of an item is right around 100. So I'm right in that same vicinity as like a PSA graded Pokemon card. No big surprise that CGC is lower than PSA, but it was pretty interesting to me to see how much higher BGS is. So the average BGS graded Pokemon card is more than double, approximately double that of PSA, and you do see the notable uptick. You see the notable uptick where Q3 of 2022, the average PSA graded Pokemon card was selling for 98, and then it's pretty flat to 100 today. BGS in the same time frame has gone up about 50%. And I mean, I didn't do it. I don't think I did it here, but you could do like a BGS Black Label search. You could do a BGS Pristine 10 search. I mean, you could really go as deep as you want to in each one of these things. But as you see here for this presentation, I think I already covered enough, and it'll be a living document. I can add more things down the line if there's interest, or I mean, people can always download this, make a copy, and you can go into all your own rabbit holes you want to dive down. Booster boxes during the mania, during the super shortage, this again would have been amazing to see during the 2020 early 2021 timeframe. But yeah, you can see the average booster box sales price went down a fair bit. One thing you'll note that might feel a bit curious, why is it so low? The summary of the data is only as good as the data, and I don't have TerraPeak still open, but if I had TerraPeak still open, some people put booster box ? Some people put like random Pokemon lot booster box. They put things in the titles that aren't real, that aren't indicative of like what's in their listing. And unfortunately, when people use like bad search manipulation tactics in their titles, that garbage gets swept up into this summary of the data. So all this data, as always, is subject to if it's in the title, it's going to be captured by this net. So yeah, it's not like guaranteed to be 100% accurate. If they put PSA ? That's being represented. If they put CGC, BGS, all three in the title, it's being like double and triple dipped on. So just be aware that the data is only as good as the source that we have. But this next little section, columns G through H, as you can see, none of these are italicized, and they're kind of separate. I guess I could have pulled these to the front or something to make it better, but what I wanted to capture here was, what is the market dominance of PSA? If anyone follows GemRate like I do on Instagram, you can see like PSA is grading approximately 1 million cards a month. CGC, BGS, SGC, all these different companies are grading significantly less. I wanted to see by sales volume, gross sales volume. What is the market dominance of PSA? Not in Pokemon, not because we got Pokemon right here, right? Like we got Pokemon is 22 of about 28. So it's 80 to 90%. I wanted to see just in all of CCGs together. So that's what this is here. PSA in all of CCGs is pretty flat. I mean, you can see Pokemon from its peak. Pokemon from its peak in Q4 of 2021 is down 25%ish, 20 to 25%ish. But all of PSA in all of CCGs is actually up 20%. So again, the data is just the data. Anyone could look at this and you could make a million different YouTube videos honing in on one segment of it, and you can spin your own narratives. I try to not spin too many narratives. I'm just trying to point out interesting things that I saw that I think may interest other people. So yeah, again, 100 people could look at this and 100 different takeaways would be taken away from it. But I'm just going to give you a couple of my little highlights that I noted. And CGC, we do see a little bit of a drop in Pokemon. Obviously, we see the drop in the average sales price, but CGC has actually grown overall. I mean, they're doing more card games now. They're doing Yu-Gi-Oh. They're doing like more than a dozen card games, I believe. So if I'm CGC, I'm seeing like a bit of a fall off in Pokemon specifically, but overall, like I'm left with one good thing in that it's grown. I mean, it peaked in Q2 of 2022, and then it's still higher than it was Q3 of 2021. And then if you look at the average sales prices, again, this is CCGs as a whole, so not just Pokemon. The average, so PSA Pokemon card had fallen about 50%, and CCGs as a whole, the average PSA sale has dropped about 50%. CGC, however, is down only 10% or so. BGS, overall, the average sale price of a BGS card has fallen from $425 down to $291. So it's just interesting to see, inclusive of Pokemon only, and then all of CCGs together, just what the different trends are. Now we will go into the next chunk. I don't see any questions coming in, so hopefully people are following and understanding what I'm going through here. So again,
and this, I mean, this data represents what, I really what it's been feeling like, I would say.
yeah,
In the past, I mean, even to the point where I remember Q3 2021. So going back, so you had Logan Paul and sort of you had the summer of 2020, things started to build. Just sort of a quick summary of kind of what happened. Prices were most of the market sort of had doubled to tripled, actually, or really doubled, I would say, before Logan Paul got in. Then Logan Paul jumped in, and you saw things 10 to 12x sort of in Wizards of the Coast from there. And then over the next few months, like certain things went up, certain things went slightly down. And then you had, starting into 2021, I actually think the highest points for most things were actually, particularly WotC, was still 2020, sort of end of 2020. And then into 2021, you had things start to fall. And then it was actually, it took about half that year into probably Q3 for things to really start to fall. So it's interesting that it to your point, it'd be great to see even just Q2, because I really think that Q2 to Q3 was that period where we really started to see a movement down, and then it really steadying around that Q4. And it's just interesting to see how, for the most part, that's reflected in these numbers. And to your point, it's like, well, obviously, I think what's most interesting about these numbers is the change from month to month. The accuracy of these numbers is highly questionable in terms of the date, the search terms and what it's including and what it's not including. I wouldn't read into the amount as much as I would read into the difference for me personally, from quarter to quarter and category to category. I think that's where
the big thing is the inaccuracies, the issues with search terms and all that's present throughout all. So like, it feels like proportionally, relatively, you should be able to make pretty decent judgments.
Yeah. Anyway, it's interesting to see, where that in that Q3. But again, be great. Maybe we'll get that data at one point, that 2020, earlier 2021 stuff.
Yeah, and I missed by a month. If I had done this on March 30th, I could have captured from April to the end of July or the end of June for 2021. But I'm going to do digging for sure. I was really bummed out that I couldn't capture more. I wish I had been doing this for the past 2 years, 3 years, but I will be doing it moving ahead. Like a lot of the sources that I use as far as Pokemetrics, Pokedata, things of that nature, a lot of them just start whenever the site was started, right? Every time I'm always, oh, well, I wish they went back this much further. I wish they, unfortunately, obviously, you can only start capturing these as far back as the databases will allow you to go. And with Terapeak, it's just 2 years.
Yeah.
So continuing on, we have Magic. And one thing I will say too, like these terms that I have in row 3, these are the exact terms that I put in. So Terapeak, like anything else, it is a search engine. It is just going to give you the data you search for, like case sensitive, or not case sensitive, but very specific to what you search. I searched Magic. I searched Magic the Gathering. MTG. I don't really sell a lot of Magic, but every time I have in the past, I think I've always put MTG in the title. If people just put Magic the Gathering, it won't be captured. MTG did have a bigger number though. So MTG felt more representative of the market as a whole. I forget the number off the top of my head, but I want to say like Magic the Gathering or just Magic was like 18, 19 million. MTG felt like it was capturing more. So I went with MTG for my search term. Again, italicized PSA, CGC, BGS. In hindsight, I wouldn't have even included them. I kind of had my sunk cost fallacy going on in that the numbers were really small and I just kept going with them because I already had them. But yeah, MTG, you can see that it peaked same Q3 of 2021. And it's been, I mean, it had a decent drop off at the end of 2021, and then it's been pretty flat since. I mean, 16.9, currently 16.6, with lows and highs 10 plus or minus 10%, that same range. You can see the discrepancy between Magic and Pokemon. So Magic is 20.1 million as a whole, 3.7 million of that, I mean, almost 20% is booster boxes, and then about a similar amount, 15 to 20% is graded. A lot of Magic must just be raw. Like a lot more of that is just players or collectors that don't care about grading. And you can see the very big discrepancy between what Pokemon and Magic, like as a percentage of the total, is in the graded slabs.
It's good that it's like that. That can make us at least not throw the data out immediately if it was, because we know that for a fact.
Yeah, it's good. It's good when you confirm things that you like know to be true. If you were seeing things, I mean, certain things might pop up that are just a complete surprise to you, and maybe some of these things will be, and maybe some won't be, but depends on the person,
Yeah, I
right?
mean,
But
even the booster boxes of Magic and all these types of things has been following exactly sort of what we've been seeing in terms of the dip in it's interesting. It's
in
interesting.
what
2022, the 4.1 for the booster box. Again, it's dangerous to read too much into this, but kind of
and it could have been, yeah, it could, like this is just eBay too. So note that this is not for Pokemon. This is not PWCC Golden Heritage. This is not TCG Player. There are like eBay is a massive marketplace for all these things. Like clearly 20 million in sales is nothing to scoff at. That's a lot of cardboard being pushed through eBay per quarter. But TCG Player is probably bigger for certain IPs, and like eBay is not going to be a constant percentage. Like if it's 20% of the Pokemon market, it might be 80% of some TCGs markets, and it might be 2% of some other TCGs markets. So context needs to be kept. This is eBay collectible card game category only. Very, very important that you keep context of what this data is and what this data isn't for sure. Yu-Gi-Oh, as you can see, Yu-Gi-Oh kind of like I would call Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh like the big three of cards. So I had that kind of in that order, and as you would expect, the numbers bear out. Yu-Gi-Oh has been just kind of like in a steady 20% drop in the past 2 years for the time frame that I have. Yu-Gi-Oh prices, average price quite a bit lower. Interesting to note, down that similar 20% or so. Magic, again, the average sale prices of the cards are quite a bit higher than we saw in Pokemon. Just a lot lower total volume. Lot less Magic cards graded and sold on eBay. One Piece is kind of an interesting one to see, like the birth of the card game. I don't know exactly what was selling because I think Q3 of 2021 predates this new iteration of the card game. Whatever it may be, something was being picked up. You can see it's only $20,000 for anyone not great with the decimals. In hindsight, again, I could have done this like in thousands instead of in millions.
There's quite a bit of old One Piece stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were picking up kind of like the baseline was somewhere between $20,000 to $40,000 per quarter. Very, very small amounts. And you can see the average sale prices were pretty low for that older stuff. And then when the new game hopped onto the scene, I think Paramount War was the second one, Romance Dawn, maybe the first one. It just came out of nowhere, like with a million a quarter. And relative to, I mean, Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, it's pretty small. But by the end, I mean, in 3 quarters of sales data, you can see it's doing half of what Yu-Gi-Oh is doing on eBay. Yeah. Again, Troll and Toad, TCG, I don't know the percentages over there, but on eBay, it's doing half of what Yu-Gi-Oh is, it's doing a fifth of what Magic is, and it's doing 5% of what Pokemon is. So interesting to just see that, like the birth of a new game and how that's played out. I don't really do much with One Piece. I did buy a case. I did contribute for Q1 of 2023. I contributed like a $2,500 sale to that. So a little bit of that's me. Weiss, I don't follow too closely, but that was one that someone requested. You can see Q3 of 2021, it was doing 600,000 for that quarter. And then it just doubled. I don't know if there was a big set released in Q4 of 2021. I don't know what it was exactly, but yeah, it doubled successive quarters, and then it's been like a pretty strong show since. Flesh and Blood, again, we didn't capture the initial boom, the initial hype, all that 2020 stuff going on, but Fab was pretty much, I mean, Fab was pretty low. I mean, 100,000, 200,000. And then it boom, 10x, a quick 10x out of nowhere in Q1 of 2023. So really interesting to see that. It will be interesting to see how it continues on. MetaZoo, I knew that it was going to be rough looking. I knew that it's gone down a lot, but to be honest, the average sales price has gone down about 66%, and the total sales volume, it peaked in Q4 of 2021 for the data we have. I don't know. I don't think it would have been higher earlier because MetaZoo actually came out. MetaZoo's 3-year will be this summer, maybe. So yeah, I guess it was Q2 of 2020 it would have came out. But anyways, yeah, like I'm going to follow closely. I mean, as a MetaZoo partner, as someone who sells a decent amount of MetaZoo, this is very relevant and interesting to me. It's worse than I would have expected. One thing that Q4 did have, I forget Seance's exact release date, but Q3 or Q4 had a major release in Seance, and then Q2, like right now, like if Q2 was smaller again than Q1, that would be very concerning because Q2 is when Native dropped. Native dropped just like 2 weeks ago. And I know my eBay sales of MetaZoo have been better looking than this data overall. So I guess I'm growing while others are shrinking or dropping it altogether. But yeah, if Q2 of 2023 is flat or down somehow, that will be warning bells for me. Just as a partner, as someone who's dealing with it, it'll be interesting to see if and how Native kind of pumps that up. With Pokemon, with Magic, there's so many more releases. I think it's harder to pick out like individual releases, but absolutely there could be a case made for like a super hot release. You'll probably notice it here and there in Pokemon. But when you release 4 to 6 sets a year, you're being caught in every quarter, right? Whereas MetaZoo, 2 to 3 major releases per year, you probably miss a quarter here or there.
I think it's surprising how consistent the booster boxes are for Pokemon. And again, we can't read too much into this, this data. I just think that's interesting. Like you do have those 16s, but I mean, we're talking about, it's everything's within 15%, 20% of the 12.8, maybe to 60, it's like, it's interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't seem that way, but again, it'd be great to see volume as well, obviously. And the volume they don't give us because it's
what do you mean by volume?
Well, if we had the
like
volume, the amount that were sold, then we would know the average,
Oh,
to be able to figure out the average.
Well, we have the total gross sales, and they actually do give you that. It's kind of like it's over constrained if you give all three. Like you could actually calculate. So 13 million divided by $145. Yeah. So
Okay.
I mean you can whatever.
So can I see box prices quickly? I'm sorry.
13 million divided by 145 would be so 89,600, but you can't do 89,655 booster boxes because again, if you go into Terapeak, I don't have it. I closed it already, but if you go into Terapeak,
you scroll down a tiny bit, Dan, I just wanted to see the bottom. Okay, so
yeah.
we've got really only the Q3 of 2021. Sorry, I missed this before when you scroll down here. Is 145 a booster box, and the rest is sort of within a more interesting. I wonder why.
And let me see.
Because obviously that doesn't make any sense based on the actual sales prices of things. Like the
booster box is probably the worst category of all of them because it scoops up a lot of listings that are not super applicable at all.
Interesting that it would, because the rest of the stuff feels accurate based on my just experiences of the hobby. That is interesting to, I mean, obviously, like one thing, so many of the listings on eBay are like for half a booster box, and it'll say booster box or for all these things. But to your point before, which I think is a good one, theoretically you'd think it would be maybe consistent from month to month, and so although
one thing
shouldn't take number, go ahead.
In Terapeak, like right now, I don't have it shared, but I have Pokemon Booster Box for Q1 of 2023. There was
Yeah.
one seller. It shows you buy item. There were 1,600 units sold of a Pokemon Go Premier Deck Holder Box Dragonite V-Star Collection at $30 a unit. So it was probably like P Football Pete sold 1,600 of those for 30 a piece. Well, that drastically brings down the average. Clearly, the average booster box is not being sold for 113 right now, but it's being dragged down by like here's someone Pokemon TCG booster packs. It's like a custom booster pack that sold 2,600 units. So you can't try to do the math and like let me switch screens again. Sorry, but yeah, let me stop this share. And then let me
It's
share
just
this
interesting
one.
that the price increases hasn't reflected in an increase in the overall sales volume of it.
So are you seeing Terapeak again now?
Yeah.
Okay. So here are the highest. It's I don't know what it's sorted by exactly, but here are some of the items being sold. 1,101 Scarlet Violet base booster boxes. So that's actual booster boxes being sold, $122 a piece. But look at all this other crap that it's
Much stuff. Yeah.
bringing in. It's bringing up 36 booster packs that are loose. It's bringing up booster
sure.
bundles.
I guess the question, right, that we were really going at before, which was, is it going to do this consistently every month? And so what's important is not, you shouldn't take the actual number so seriously, but you should take the relative from month to month, the shifts and changes, which is what I was thinking. And it's just interesting to see that. But again, yeah, I mean, theoretically too, you could have like a few Skyridge boxes sell one month, or a base set first edition, but like you could have a massive, $150,000 box theoretically sell that could maybe move but even with the sample size, you'd think even things like that, it would be hard to really move it from $150-ish to $116 on average. I mean, that's pretty significant given the amount of
That's the
volume.
nice thing about Terapeak, though. You can go in and if you have like a question, if you wonder what's going on, you can see the actual data. Like right now, I just sorted it by average sold price. So I can see like Japanese base box. I can see a first edition German box. Like you can see, I mean, you could look for how many Evolving Skies boxes sold. And Terapeak is actually a very, very powerful tool. Like here's a sale that probably didn't even go through, probably not even a real listing. $150,000 must be like a base first box.
It would also be interesting to maybe separate out Wizards of the Coast or maybe different eras at some point too. Could be interesting to see.
And again, like depending on every person is going to have their different desire for what to see. You can go as deep as you want with this. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because like if we really want to see just like how the ultra modern booster box market is going on as sort of a judgment of kind of like, where is the hobby, we could type in Sword and Shield booster box or something like that, or which would give us more of a sense month to month, kind of how those, because we know the prices, anyone who's engaged in this hobby and sort of the price changes from quarter to quarter. But what we don't know offhand, which this is telling us, which is really interesting, is the actual total dollar amount, and then the amount of that are being sold at those levels. Because I like manually track that somewhat, and kind of go into it. And obviously, if this was accurate, this would be like a major time saver.
Yeah.
Anyway, super interesting. I love data. So
I was at MetaZoo, I think. Yeah,
Yu-Gi-Oh!
MetaZoo.
At how low Yu-Gi-Oh! Is. Doesn't that seem low?
I don't know much about Yu-Gi-Oh, but yeah, like
I'm not saying it is. I just I'm just calling things out that kind of jump out to me personally.
Like I wouldn't have guessed that MetaZoo was 2/3 of Yu-Gi-Oh at one point, or half of Yu-Gi-Oh. I have no idea though. What I mean, I'm in MetaZoo. I'm not in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what's reasonable. And again, Yu-Gi-Oh might be 90% TCG player and 10% eBay, whereas Pokemon might be 60% eBay and 40. Like I have no idea the relative like platform variance between these. I would think Magic, this is mostly a guess, but I would think Magic is disproportionately more like Channel Fireball, and like there are some massive companies that are completely separate from this. Well, they're not completely separate from the data, right? Because most of these companies do have an eBay page, but they probably sell a big bulk through like card, all the
Yeah.
ones that Rudy Channel Fireball, and Rudy mentions their names sometimes, or his nicknames for them. I did include too, like I wanted to see some that were like not completely dead, but mostly dead. I didn't realize. I know, like at a Collecticon I went to, Jason Page was there and he was singing on D Spirits. I think he sang their theme song, kind of like he did for Pokemon. I thought D Spirits would have gotten bigger than it had, because like it's just funny the comparison between, like, MetaZoo was a Kickstarter that failed to fully fund, or it failed to, I think it failed its actual goal. And yet MetaZoo, like, some amount of success, right? Still going two towards 3 years later. These Spirits and Akora, I believe these were some of those Kickstarters that overfunded their goal. Like they did $500,000 or $1 million on Kickstarter, and you can see they've never really taken off. I mean, when you see 0.003, that's $3,000. That's like 100 items at an average of $34 a piece sold for D Spirits in Q3 of 2021. It peaked 10, 15 times that at $50,000, but now it's back down to like $7,000. And is it dead completely? I don't really know. Are there people that play it? I don't really know. But yeah, like seeing D Spirits, seeing Akora. I mean, Akora did 4,000 back in Q3 2021. It peaked a couple quarters later at 50x. It 50x'd from Q3 to Q1, but it peaked at $200,000, and now it's dropped 90% since. So that's kind of like the beginning, the boom, potentially the bust. I don't know what's actually going on in these, but D Spirits was one that I threw in. Akora was one that was requested. Look at the average. I mean, look at the average numbers. Like some of these, there were actually some, whether these were Kickstarter boxes or cards or whatever they were something to an extent, and now they're in rough shape. I mean, MetaZoo clearly isn't what it was, but it's not quite that bad. It's just interesting, the comparison between these different Kickstarter TCGs and their life cycle. It will be, as we go, add on 5 more years to this and just see where Fab ends up, where Weiss ends up. The more data, the better, obviously.
And I think a couple of important things to add to this, for anyone who's looking at this. I think all this data is great, and it can be very helpful to get a sort of sense of the general trends and the general movements in all these different card markets. Phenomenal. But just to point one thing out, to Dan's point that he made earlier with something like MetaZoo, it does, just because something is shrinking does not mean that it's not viable or that it's not going to continue to function well. And it doesn't mean that your specific sales and your specific business is going to do worse, because there are other factors in play. There are the amount of sellers, the amount of competition that you're having to deal with, So a small game could function really well if their overhead costs weren't that great, there's a lot of other factors that go in, and whether, when you look at this, if you choose this is a good one maybe for me to engage in and speculate on, sometimes some of the smaller ones you can actually make a lot of money and you can create quite a profitable business because there's less competition. So I think it's just something to I just wanted to add that, because I think it potentially, someone can look at this and be like, well, it's not even worth me engaging in one of these smaller things. And what I would say is, from my experience, that oftentimes, I've had really good success in some of the smaller stuff. You just obviously have to be more careful, and you have to understand that there is probably, particularly for newer things, there's more likely to be probably some significant volatility, and obviously something going from what do you say, 0.003 to what? I forget which one you was, but there was one that you said, like,
Akora 50x.
50x, right? That, I mean, these types of things could really dramatically impact your business in the positive or the negative. So you do have to be, those types of things, could really hurt or help.
And one thing we don't have, one thing that would be amazing to see, Pokemon. Imagine like the data didn't even exist. I'm sure eBay wasn't. eBay did exist, but well, yeah, eBay existed in the early mid '90s, somewhere in there. I forget exactly when. But if you could have captured, I mean, Pokemon, would it have fallen 90%? I don't know what percent it would have fallen, but clearly from 1999 to 2000, 2001, it peaked somewhere in there. 2003, it might have looked like a kind of like an Akora. I mean, probably with more zeros at the end, but it probably would have done something that like 50x out of nowhere, and then it dropped 90%. I mean, Pokemon almost surely did. So whether Metazoo dropping 80% is, I mean, it's still better than, it's worse than not having dropped 80%, right? But is it sustainable? Is it going to be able to survive that? Again, I think Q2 will be very interesting just because you do have a main set release in native, and I will definitely be much more concerned if we don't see something higher than 1.1 with the main set release of native.
And there can also be a big difference between price drop and then overall sale drop. And so, for example, in Pokemon, in some of these periods, we might have seen there are certain cards that fell 90% in value or 80% in value, but it didn't mean the overall market fell that. So it's also interesting how you can, these markets they can be, certain parts of the market can be highly bubble-ish or extremely speculative and very volatile, while the overall market doesn't necessarily need to be that volatile. So and this type of data can show that, I think. As anyone who's engaged in these markets knows that, but it's interesting to see.
Yeah, in this 2-year time frame that we have captured, there are absolutely Pokemon cards that have fallen 60 to 90%, and there are some that have also 10x in that same time frame. But the looking at such a broad pool of items, looking at things that are so diverse, and overall, this is what it amounted to, right? It amounted to a peak in late 2021, and then it's been pretty flat since. So I did check out just to like kind of get the initial data. We're kind of seeing the birth of Kakao, literally not a thing in 2022, came out of nowhere in Q1 of 2023. I did put non-sports here, so the search term is just Kakao, but instead of being in the collectible card game, I went to the non-sports because that's where people are listening for that. And 1.4 million, boom, out of nowhere, it surpassed Metazoo. Just overnight, it got dropped, and then it's now bigger than Metazoo. It's bigger than Flesh and Blood 10x. And in that category for that quarter, what's being scooped up on eBay? Yeah, just out of nowhere. And then Lorcana,
it's close to Weiss. It's close to Weiss, which is a major,
yeah.
I mean, that,
if we could just see the next 2 years of data, I mean, it'll be very interesting to see how that pans out. Like, this will be a living document. It will definitely be added to. I don't know that I'll do it every quarter, like as the quarter hits on the first, but certainly probably for like my my like January presentation, I'll probably add in all the new quarters, and that might not be my whole presentation, but I'll certainly do like a quick recap of that at least once a year, I would say.
Can you humor me? Can we look up Disney quickly, just as a whole category? Because I'm curious to see how that's changed over time, if you don't mind. I don't know if you'll be able to capture that well, but
you want to see Disney? Let me get it shared.
So you think in non-sports is the place to look?
Well, we can look. Nice thing about it. So I searched Disney, and so Disney is 46 million. That is going to be cards. That is going to be figures, plushes, everything. When we go into select a different category, so we see that there was 1.5 million sales, only 2,000 in sports, only 600 in musical instruments. Let's go down to toys and hobbies. 286,000 in toys and hobby. And then there's another one, collectibles somewhere. So there's 1.5 million listings. Where are they all? There's a bunch in video games.
Looks like they're pretty spread out.
Collectibles has 760,000. So in collectibles, there is I believe there's a trading cards. Yeah, non-sports trading cards. So there's 27,000 in non-sports trading cards. And then in where we are in Pokemon, we're in toys and hobbies, collectible card games. So there's only 3,000 there for Disney. Certain IPs are a bit more split up, a bit more segmented. So I don't know where you'd want to look.
Well, let's look in the biggest one just to compare that over time.
Probably the
Yeah, collectibles, and then the and I
collectibles
apologize if other people aren't that interested in this.
non-sports trading cards.
And I really think this will be interesting to watch over time in general. This one, but
So it was 1.7 million with the average sales price of 65.55. And then you want to look, I mean, we can look at the whole last 2 years and we can just see the whole chart, I guess.
curious.
Oh, see, I didn't do the lock selected filters, so I went back to the entire thing. That's annoying.
Oops.
I, so collectibles, but you can see the Disney market as a whole. So there's our Disney market as a whole is 375 million. And then let's
And
see
it's
what
pretty flat. You
what
can see it's
portion of
pretty
that is cards. Like clearly in Pokemon, I think I wrote it in my presentation. 83% of Pokemon on eBay is in the collectible card game category. So 375 million. And then we go to non-sports trading cards. So what over 375 million? Slightly over 1%, 1 to 1.5% of Disney on eBay is collectible cards. And you can see that massive spike. So that's the average sold price alone. Average sold price and total sold. So yeah, you do see the big increase in the
And
past.
can we see it even just from like 2 years ago? To lock it and look. I'm
This is
curious.
the past 2 years.
Oh, I thought this was 1 year. Sorry. Oh, I
No,
see. May.
yep. This is the
So it's
full.
really been so it's really been flat, and then roughly, reasonably, and then you have Kukawa or whatever.
Yeah, I might be saying that completely wrong too. I've heard someone say Kakawao on a different on a podcast or something. So I'm sticking with that now forever, probably.
Wow, I think, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I'll need to remember it in a year or two. We'll see. I mean, we'll see, right? I have no idea.
Oh yeah, I just think that's such an interesting thing. And this really, like, to me, again, I know Dan does his best not to speculate too much, and for too many unsubstantiated narratives. I enjoy them. I think you do have to take them with a grain of salt, but this, like, when people say that influencers don't impact markets, this is an area where, like you literally had tons of influencers all of a sudden breaking this product, showing this product to people. Now, some people may argue that it's a really high quality product and people really like it, and it was sort of the demand. It's always this sort of like two sides. It's like people are just showing people what they want, or it's like what influencers decide to show becomes super valuable. And I think that in the short run, I tend to lean into like the problem is, how do you predict what the influencers are going to show and what the influencers are going to pump and what these things are if you're not an influencer? And you really can't. And so I guess you just have to sell into it. You buy a bunch of things that you think are good, and then occasionally when influencers pump them up like this, you got to sell. But it's that's kind of interesting. Because as someone who's been engaged in the market, like, prices have increased quite a bit on other things, but there's such small amounts of things. Yeah, and the Kakao is so, yeah, that's amazing. What was it, 1.4 million? That's an unbelievable amount.
Yeah, literally
Um,
just oh, I mean, it looks like overnight here, but over a quarter over a quarter, it went from nothing, not being a thing, not existing, to just boom, bigger than MetaZoo, bigger than Fab, almost as big as Weiss. And again, just eBay. All of the platforms I don't know. I did throw in Lorcana. I mean, Lorcana, you had the promos dropping late last year. It'll be interesting to see how that number varies once we get the actual TCG. Grand Archive is one of the new Kickstarter CCGs, TCGs that someone suggested. So I think that just came out. So yeah, we had 100,000 in sales in Q1 of 2023. Be interesting to follow along, see where that goes. Lorcana, you can see the average sales price going down significantly quarter over quarter. It's such a small amount. Like, I don't know exactly if the promos were falling. I don't know if some supplemental promo came out. Again, maybe people are just baiting Lorcana in the title. That's one thing you can run into. People might be putting Kakao in a
Sure.
Pokemon card title because they know that it's hot, because they know it's being sold. People might be putting Kakao in a Metzu title. Like it's just what people do. That is why search manipulation is disallowed. That is why it is terrible, because it just screws up data. It screws up searches. It wastes people's time. So please don't do it. um, I did also
Anderson
do.
did they release any products other than the Disney 100 set? So Phantom is the company that makes Kakao or Cacao, however,
Yeah.
however we say it. And my understanding is that's the only thing. But you know, I could be wrong. I that's what I've heard from people, and quick sort of, and I think I'm pretty confident that there's no other Disney stuff. But and again, it wouldn't be Kakao. I don't think. I think it would be Phantom or under Phantom probably, which I think is the name of the company. But it's an interesting question, and I'm not sure. Everything I'm saying right, or some of what I'm saying right now could be wrong for sure.
And then someone did request Marvel, so I threw Marvel in. Marvel, I was surprised with how little there was. I don't know. I did look kind of going into Terapeak. I looked at all the different categories. It wasn't in toys and hobbies, collectible card games. Makes sense because it's not an actual game. The biggest category I saw for Marvel was listed in sports trading cards. Maybe there was some listed. Maybe that was one of the things that was more fragmented because people didn't know where to go with it. Whereas Pokemon is more obvious and sports is the most obvious. I think you go into sports memorabilia, sports trading cards. But Marvel's been pretty flat. I think it did its big boom in more early 2021, mid 2020. I could be wrong there. I don't follow Marvel too closely. You can see I didn't flesh out the entire average sales price because sports was more of an afterthought. Sports was more of like, let's give some context to what these TCGs and CCGs are doing. And it was interesting because Panini, just a broad search Panini, you can see since Prism is italicized, Prism is like a subset. So it was Panini Prism, one of the bigger releases. I don't know much about sports cards, but I did a quick Google search of what are the biggest manufacturers of sports cards by like total sales. And these were some of them. I don't think these were all of them, but yeah, Panini, Topps, Bowman, Donruss, Upper Deck, Fleer. And then these four are just the search terms kind of. Pokemon has the big three, I think, primarily PSA, BGS, CGC. Sports, the big three is PSA, BGS, SGC, and then I did just include for interest, CSG is kind of the sports branch of CGC. So yeah, there's a lot of information here. You can see Panini kind of leading the way. It's been pretty consistent with Topps not too far behind, but a lot of sports actually peaked a little bit later than Pokemon did. It seems Q2 of 2022 was the peak. Like again, I don't have as much for the average sale price, but interesting to see. Like Panini alone, Panini is one manufacturer of sports cards, and they triple, quadruple Pokemon alone. And then Topps doubles, triples it by itself. And Bowman is fairly close, like on par, just one manufacturer with Pokemon alone. So just a little bit of context, just a little bit of interesting information, I think, to throw in looking at sports as compared to non-sports and TCG type stuff we mostly do.
And the only thing I would add, which kind of complicates sports too, is they like the number of products and the expense of the products and the amount they print has shifted a lot over the last few years as they're trying to figure out, like, the companies try to capture a lot more of the market share and raise their prices really high in the secondary market. Like there's a lot. Whereas I think Pokemon has been a little bit more consistent in its approach the last few years. I mean, obviously, we think that they've printed a lot more. No one really knows for sure, but they haven't created a lot more, crazy sort of, a lot. They haven't added a number of more serialized cards. They haven't added, they don't have these $4,000, $6,000, $8,000, specialty products, which I think can potentially skew these numbers here and there a bit. But how about I guess one way to look at it would be, how did the average price change below? Or we don't have that so much.
I don't have it by manufacturer, but I did go through and I did it for the big four grading companies. You can see, yeah, there's the average sales price. interesting to see relative to Pokemon. I mean, the average PSA sales price of a sports card. And one thing that you're missing largely, most super high-end sports cards are sold through Heritage, PWCC Golden. eBay is definitely like more shifted towards the lower to mid end probably. I think most cards that are transacting high 5-figure, 6-figure, 7-figure, I think the majority of those are not on eBay. But again, what percentage, and maybe certain sports are more, certain manufacturers, I don't know all like the nitty-gritty details of that.
And that's interesting that they've all tracked down versus the boxes, which like had more of that uptick in the middle.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that is all the raw data. So that was just the raw data.
I mean the overall sales volume. I mean the sales amount. Like this, the overall sales amount, as you showed, some of the peaks were in those like Q1, Q2. Whereas if you look at the actual like average price, it was clearly followed Pokemon more down
But
below.
yeah, that is the entirety of the raw data that I put together. I do have a handful of charts that are just maybe making the data more digestible, maybe making the data a bit more pleasing to the eye, I guess, instead of just a bunch of numbers on the screen. So this is the big four grading companies in sports. This is literally the last thing we just looked at. PSA, the big dog. Left side in all of these charts will always be sales in millions of dollars, and the bottom will always be just the date, quarter by quarter. So yeah, there's just the market dominance of PSA in sports, with BGS being second, SGC being third. CSG is probably not even fourth. There's probably other ones I'm missing. I don't know if there's alphabet soup. There's so many companies in there. Maybe CSG is not even fourth, but I think I covered the big three and then threw in the other one. This one is the market dominance of PSA in CCG. So this is not just in Pokemon. This is in CCGs as a total category. You can see BGS and CGC kind of taking turns in second, well below PSA. Again, not a surprise, just putting the same data in different form. Pokemon, this is Pokemon. So the blue line is Pokemon as a whole. Same data from the very first thing we looked at, very first couple columns. And so Pokemon, the blue line, is everything together. And then PSA Pokemon is the red line. CGC Pokemon is kind of the fourth line down there, the yellow. BGS is the green. And then booster boxes is the red. The orange, red and orange. So by sales volume, by actual, more PSA Pokemon cards are sold by sales volume than booster boxes. Big three TCG. This is Pokemon. Big three TCG. I don't know what. This might be one that I didn't end up deleting out. That, yeah, I think this one's just an error. I was throwing a lot of charts together, and this is just kind of putting Pokemon in the context of sports. Pokemon's the blue line down towards the middle. Panini in tops, well ahead of Pokemon, and then all the other sports. So Pokemon just amongst not sports as a whole, but individual manufacturers, it's holding its own. If it were like a if you wanted to equate it, it would be like a third to fourth range manufacturer of sports. If you tried to make that analogy, the average sales price of Pokemon by PSA, CGC, BGS, booster box, and then Pokemon as a whole. So Pokemon as a whole, a lot of raw cards, a lot of things that drag the average down. And it's not surprising that a graded card or a booster box would have an average higher sales price than Pokemon. One thing I thought about doing, and I think I mentioned it when I talked about what I was going to present on, Google Trends. I did search up a couple different Google Trends, and the tool is interesting. I see some people make content around it. It's not super useful, I don't think. It again is very particular on what you type in. Like if I were to add a comparison right now, what you're looking at is blue is Pokemon trading card game. Red is searches for Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game. So Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game is searched more than Pokemon trading card game. Interesting to me. I've never played any of them, and Magic is searched significantly more. But if you were to put Pokemon in as a search term, this would capture people searching Pokemon Go, Pokemon movies, Pokemon on. This would capture Anytime anyone is searching anything Pokemon, look at what happens and look at how much it dwarfs everything else. So obviously the trading card game is one small subset of all the apps, all the games, all the anime, all the movies. But yeah, I was going to do more with Google Trends, and then it just didn't end up being very interesting or useful. These are a couple of the things that I tried. Pokemon PSA search terms over time in the past 5 years. It didn't peak. Well, it peaked right when you would have expected, late 2020, early 2021. So confirming what you would have expected. Let me go through the last couple. I think this was, yeah, not Pokemon, but just PSA grading as a whole, CGC grading as a whole, and BGS grading as a whole. You can see CGC kind of was right on par with BGS through a lot of 2018, 2019, 2020. And then it's kind of separated a little bit. Second to PSA, but quite a ways back. And then the final search term that I did.
I will defend them usually about rebounds, as Glenn Hall once told me.
I didn't know if that was me or if that was someone. Someone's watching the game, must be. But I did Pikachu versus Charizard versus Moonbreon, and I don't know what was going on, but for some reason Pikachu was being searched like crazy in May of 2019. But yeah, Google Trends I think has use, but I didn't feel there was too much presentable from it.
When was Detective Pikachu?
I don't know. It might have been that. But yeah, anyways, that's what I've got.
That was excellent, Dan. Thank you. And that'll be a great resource for people to kind of, and it'll just be cool. I'm with you. Like, the longer you do things like that, the cooler it is to see over long periods of time, sort of how these things trend. So I guess one question I have for you, Dan, is do you find, and the answer can just be no, which is fine, but like, immediately, does any of this feel actionable to you? Does it make you feel more comfortable and confident with having so much money in this and so much of your time and energy and business in this? Does it make you less comfortable? How does this data like make you feel? I'm curious.
The MetaZoo was honestly a little bit scarier than I expected. I mean, I knew the MetaZoo was going to look kind of rough. I've felt some of that, but given that my MetaZoo has scaled significantly over the same time the broader has gone down 80%, I guess I wouldn't have guessed that it would have gone down 80%, not quite that much. But I knew some individual prices had. But whereas in Pokemon, some individual prices fell 80%, but the market as a whole stayed flat, I would have guessed MetaZoo maybe had fallen 50% or something. I don't really know what number I would have put to it. Now my mind is tainted by actually seeing the data. But yeah, one actionable thing for me is going to be the month over month, just keeping a closer eye on MetaZoo. And I mean, I don't anticipate I'll be having to end my partnership, cut ties, stop buying the product just based on what I'm seeing sales wise, but definitely relevant to me as a business. If I were anyone in here, obviously, I mean, some people do Japanese only, some people do jungle PSA 9s only. You can search any eBay search term. And obviously, there's hundreds of people in this Patreon. I couldn't search everyone's favorite search terms. I had to go fairly broad, but I think it's pretty interesting to just go through and do, whether it's out of curiosity or whether it's like, hey, is this market big enough? Does it make sense? I feel like hopefully the instruction on how to use Terapeak and the fact that it exists was informative to some people, and maybe they'll play around with it, but maybe not too. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of ways you can use this data. You can use it as, this feels too small to me. I feel like there could be upside in certain IPs. Do the IPs make sense with each other? There's a lot of ways that I think you can use it. As far as like my question to me, like I like this stuff. It makes me feel more comfortable. I like knowing or having some sense of the movement more than just my own. Because I'm like you, even though I talk to lots of people and I engage in the market all the time, I constantly sort of doubt my own sort of experience as describing sort of a broader thing. So any more data makes me feel more comfortable in sort of my impression of the general trends and what's going on. As far as something like MetaZoo or some of these smaller games, it's also so heavily impacted by there's such small amounts of items that they can be so heavily impacted if some of the MetaZoo original items, the Kickstarters, the big cards, these types of things fall a dramatic amount. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily mean that, the new set can be doing really well, and yet the overall market could be really strongly impacted. Whereas in Pokemon, there's so many things that
You have 25 years of history and 40 billion cards. Yeah.
Yeah, it's much more difficult for any one thing, any one failure, any one extreme thing to kind of impact that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that trends. And I bring that up also for things like Weiss and things like, sorry, not Weiss. I meant to say Flesh and Blood and certainly like One Piece, and one you didn't put on, but like Dragon Ball Super is another one that
I thought about that earlier, that was probably one of the bigger omissions that I didn't intend to omit. But yeah, and if someone wants, like, feel free to message me if you want something added. I can't add 100 new columns and 100 new things, but if it was a bigger oversight like Dragon Ball Super, I can definitely add some in before we lose the data. I have 2 more months to capture like the same quarter before I lose that data.
Yeah. Any questions from anyone here? And if you'd like, feel free to ask, turn on your mic and ask about, for Dan, about the presentation, anything you're wondering specifically before we just like move on to general Q&A.
Yeah, and if you don't have a mic, if you don't want to use your mic, you can drop it in chat too.
Yeah. Okay. So if anyone thinks of anything, feel free to write that in chat. So I have one question for us to start with, and then we can just sort of open it up to everyone here. We're gonna go at least another 30 minutes. If people continue to have questions after that, we'll keep going. So that's sort of up to you guys, but we'll go for at least another 30 minutes tonight. Let's see. Oh, I think I closed it by mistake. Let me pull it up one more time.
Yeah, and if there's no presentation specific questions, feel free to just drop any questions that you have broadly too. We do have one broad question that came in through Patreon, I believe. I do see Eli dropped a question.
Yeah, why don't we start with Eli's if you want to start with that, and I'll grab the other one.
So Eli says, unrelated question. I've noticed that a lot of Sword Shield era alt arts have lost like 15 to 20% in value, with the obvious exception of Moonbryon. Any thoughts why? Just because Scarlet Violet is out now, will prices keep cratering on these, or is this most of the drop already? It is very, very hard to say, but this stuff is continually being printed. I mean, new products are coming out. We're not seeing reprints and booster boxes, but we're seeing reprints in a lot of packs. We're seeing a lot of packs come out in various collection boxes and tins and the things they release through Pokemon Center and these big Costco bundles and things they're doing. So this is like normal as far as I'm concerned. It is normal for when a set releases, prices to be really, really high. Everyone's stonking out of the gate, hype, FOMO, this and that. And then for at least the 2-year window that everything's in print, in rotation, generally speaking, singles fall. I mean, you can't paint with a broad brush. It's not going to cover everything. But generally speaking, over that 2-year time frame, more is being printed, more is being opened, more is being graded. Generally speaking, the general trend is that prices go down over that time frame. So yeah, to me, like, it feels normal. Will it go down significantly more? I don't really know. My long-term broad thinking on all this is pretty well known. I think that things don't just have to go up forever. Shinier, flashier, better things will come out. I mean, I think Scarlet Violet, like most base sets, I think people are generally assuming like it's starting kind of slow. There's no major chases. That's generally what happens, though. By the end of Scarlet Violet, I will be shocked if we don't have some new shiny VMAX Alt Art Moonbryon, some shiny VMAX Alt Art Charizard. Like, these things are just going to happen. They're going to draw the main hype. They're going to draw the main attention. PokeRev will be opening more of the new thing 2 years from now than he will be opening Evolving Skies and Rebel Clash and Battle Styles. And that's just the way attention and demand and all that goes.
Yeah, so certainly that's what I have. That's been my answer for years. You know, when asked these types of things, I have our video you can go back on Hidden Fates being asked the exact same questions about those. You know, the Hidden Fate singles and the Hidden Fates cards, giving the same sort of answer. I think the one thing though, in the short run, the only way to try to predict prices, and this is not something that I do and engage in, but is to really track how many are selling each day on TCG. What's the trend? You know, are there a bunch for sale? Like if you get really into that, if you're really into that, like I'm sure that will make you more likely to guess correctly kind of which way it's going to go, at least in the very short term, and how much. There are people who do that type of thing and track charts and all that sort of stuff. In the longer run, it, you know, I made a whole video, you know, kind of talking about like, you know, will alt arts be popular, and you know, how is alt art gonna be viewed in the long run in this hobby? And the answer is nobody knows. And you know, as far as trying to compare it to old things, you know, we've heard people compare it to gold stars a lot. Like they're gonna have the same sort of staying power as gold stars. And although I can't say definitively whether or not that's gonna happen, if you think they're being priced as gold stars would have been like if gold stars were now, this is what they'd be like if it's already being priced in, if you think they're being that the prices are reflecting sort of overly optimistic future potential, then it's likely going to go quite a bit down considerably over time from here. If you think that they're actually cheap and that people are underestimating them, and there's an argument that could be made, particularly I think for, I mean, there are beautiful alt arts that are $30, $40, $20. I mean, not all these cards are $500, you know, and you think Pokemon is going to continue to be extremely successful and engage in all these things. You know, I wouldn't be stunned if these cards were $60, $100 in 4 to 5 years, some of those. I wouldn't be surprised. These are just way worse as investments than these things were 3-4 years ago when no one was buying them and no one was thinking of them as investments. And I think that's the key point. Like when I was buying them as investments, like level X's and full arts from X and Y, you know, and black and white and secret rares, like people weren't thinking of them as investments, weren't talking about them as investments like nearly as much. So there just wasn't that sort of speculation built in. I think the price points on these today are so much higher than we were all buying those things back then. And the print run is so much larger on these than the print run was on that. It's not a great bet. Like it's not a good investment. Now, none of us, including Dan and I, you know, we don't try to predict what's going to happen. We just sort of we compare things to different things that have worked in the past, and we can decide, is this a better or worse sort of investment? And it really depends on how much of a gamble and how optimistic you are. You know, now, if you ask me, like, are these a better investment than some of the earlier stuff that people say? It's like some of those $20, $30 ones, I would rather buy as an investment than some $500, $600, $800, you know, X and Y black and white full arts that I don't necessarily think are going to be at, you know, that I think are quite expensive. You know, so there are always examples from every era that may feel overvalued or undervalued to specifically Dan and I. What you guys should do is just sort of think it through and kind of trust your own instincts at the end of the day, what you think is attractive, what you think is going to be popular in the long run. But I think the correct things to think about are the stuff that some of the stuff that Dan and I talk about, you know, the negatives of that they're going to just continue to print great looking cards of a lot of these Pokemon. Why are these going to stand out? And then just sort of the overall, are we at a real high time right now still? And are you buying anything you're buying today? This is what I think, you know, anything you're buying today, no matter what it is, in any card hobby that has been largely discovered, there's some risk, elevated risk, because of the, you know, if you're buying it seriously as an investment, because so many people are doing that and so many people are engaged in these spaces in that way.
Yeah, the point you touched on, like how much future optimism is baked into the price. And I think a lot of people just think if Lorcana succeeds, having the original promos will guaranteed replicate what Pokemon did, or replicate when that mentality is priced in, and the promos, and this applies to MetaZoo, this applies to One Piece, whatever other card game. These things are selling at so many multiples of what these other things did right out of the gate, because they have that future optimism built in. Like the return on investment of a sample Mothman that sells for $50,000. If MetaZoo is still a thing in 10 years, it just inherently won't be as good as it was for like a base set first edition Charizard or something of that nature. Because like the price is already doing what the Charizard did 15 years in or 20 years in. Like,
and listen, I think that the way that I would view it with that type of stuff, it's a very hard thing to really, I very much agree with Dan, and I think that that's a big issue. But I think what's hard, and where I would push back against that, these types of statements, is that these things can be worth sort of not any amount, but they can be worth such a wide variety, you know, when you have, what is it? How many Mothmen are there? Let's just take, because we're talking about MetaZoo.
600
600
Kickstarter, first full hollow, I think.
Sure. You know, 600 of those, right? Like, if if those are the, you know, could there be $600 million in Mothman market cap, or, you know, $6 billion in market? Yeah. If MetaZoo becomes the largest franchise in the world someday, and those become the key thing, there could be a $6 billion market, and inflation continues, and trading cards, you know, like, and that would obviously make them way more than $1,000 each, or, you know, $800, right? You can take these things in sort of those crazy ways. You have to decide, are people overly bullish now, or under bullish, or under, or are they overly
bearish,
rationally bearish, or and I think that that's a hard thing to decide. Now, the stuff that tends to work the best is when you somehow pick the thing that nobody else is doing and no one's talking about. I can't think, and again, you know, there's so many different collectibles, but like when you look at like the collectibles that have made people the most money historically over time, it was not a Lorcana low printed promo that everyone thought was going to do really well, that a lot of people bought in, and then it ended up being worth millions of dollars someday. It was things like Action Comics #1. It was things like Black Lotus. It was things that were thrown out that were worth a nickel, that nobody kept in good condition. That, right? Like, and now, is that the only way to value? Not necessarily, but we're in an age right now of sort of this manufactured rarity, and we're seeing it with like serialized cards and all these types of things, and we just don't know. I really don't think we know how these are going to do long term and what they're going to look like. And the fact that people are engaging them immediately in sort of that like investable, highly investable sort of way is a bad start. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't be way more valuable in the future and work out. It's just a bad start. It's not, it's if you can buy something that has all of those great fundamentals and other people are not speccing in and investing in, that's a much better start than if you're already buying into something that someone's investing in speccing. Now, as I said, just to reiterate, that doesn't mean that it can't go up a lot from there. It's just a lot riskier, and it's
something
like, There's so much cool stuff in the world. You know what I mean? Like, it's even beyond cards. Like, there's so many cool antiques and collectibles and all sorts of things that people could put money into. You know, um, yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
Dan, what were you
Something that feels kind of analogous. Maybe it's not super similar, but I see a lot of people talking about the Yu Nagaba. I hope I'm saying that right. All the evolutions coming out, and some people are saying, are they the next stamp promo, screen promos, Mario, like whatever successful Japanese release you want to talk about. And some people are probably planning on investing in them. Some people are planning on flipping them heavily. They're just not going to replicate exactly what the screen promos did, because one, you're not going to be able to buy them for $6 a piece out of the gate. You're not like Mario boxes. Mario boxes were $40 a piece. These things are going to be priced with the moment in mind. Like, they're going to be priced for the moment, in that the print runs are higher, people are stonkier, and the price is just going to be that much higher out of the gate. They could be very successful. I intend to flip them, as does everyone else. Some amount of people are going to be there investing in them. How it's all going to pan out, I don't really know. But overall, I'm pretty confident it won't be the same like multiple that I got on my screen promos. I mean, I missed the Mario promos, and I was there, I was present, but I hit on the screen promos heavily. I hit on those very heavily. I do not anticipate I'll be able to replicate what those did, just because a lot of it's priced in. A lot, when it's obvious, when everyone's there, when everyone's doing it, it increases that price out of the gate. And then there's more downward pressure on the other end, because people are just racing it to the bottom. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see where it all goes though.
And you know, I'll be blunt. I only ever invest in things that like other people generally are not, like in these spaces.
And you're not
It's
investing in Pokemon like at all right now, right? You've mentioned.
years, right? For years, I haven't viewed this stuff as like seriously investable for that reason, and have been flipping for years in Pokemon, or short-term, we could say short-term investing. You know, people have problems with these words, you know, about what we really mean when we say investing, right? But like, you know, short-term investing, as in, I've seen that the last 4 sets have skyrocketed up, and I can get this at $80, and I'm hoping it's going to go to 110, 150, 200, 250, 400, you know, whatever these other sets have done in the next year, and I'm going to sell. You know, that sort of speculation or investing. Let's see. So, Dan, you have anything to add before we move on to the next question?
No, I think you covered it. We did have a question come in from Todd. I saw you copy and pasted.
Yeah, let's take Todd's first.
Okay.
Um,
So Todd said, I saw Dan post in the Discord recently that he pulled all his cards out of the PWCC vault. Wondering if he can expand on the reasons for this. Also, what do you guys think of vault services as a whole? Like, what is offered from PWCC, eBay, and collectors? I have a video on YouTube dropping tomorrow talking about Dallas Collecticon and what I'm bringing. And I do touch on my PWCC vault emptying, because partially that's it. I'm doing it partially to have inventory to bring to Dallas. And I'm also doing it because one of my big goals for the year is to just level up my eBay and substantially increase the amount of sales I do through eBay. PWCC just wasn't doing much anymore. I had a handful of cards listed, and sales were very, very low. Sales were a lot just slower as a whole than eBay for the cards I had. And so those are the main reasons why I emptied it. Vault as a whole, I'm really excited for eBay Vault. I mean, that is something that is underway to an extent. If you buy a card on eBay and it goes through the authenticity guarantee, so like a graded card above 200 or 250, you can have it sent to the vault instead of sent to you. And I've not done it yet. I've not like opened up my vault account, but they're doing a lot of teaser rates and promotions, and there will be more coming throughout the year, I'm certain. So yeah, part of me emptying my vault is preemptive for Dallas inventory, preemptive for leveling up my eBay, potentially preemptive for getting it into the eBay vault. So tying in the two things together. Collectors, I've not used theirs, but yeah, you do have the option to ship to the collector's vault with your PSA returns instead of ship back to you. They're tied to like Golden. I just don't like Golden as a sales platform for Pokemon cards, primarily most of my inventory. So it's not something I intend to use anytime soon. PWCC, I liked them a lot better when they were on eBay. They no longer are. So I'm going, I wouldn't say all in on eBay, but I'm going heavy on eBay as a business. What about you?
What do I think about vault services as a whole? I don't have a lot of thoughts on it. I don't feel like I'm super knowledgeable about it. I mostly just listen to what other people say. You know, I've only ever used the PWCC vault. And it was fine. Like there was a time where I was trying just like buying stuff off PWCC, and then during, trying to flip it back on just to kind of see how that worked and not have to, for it to even come to me. I still have some stuff in that vault I actually need to pull out at some point. Nothing massive, but it's always, having inventory is always good. A little extra inventory never hurts. Um, um, I think that how to efficiently. So I'll just talk for myself. I don't like I don't enjoy the process of selling, unless I'm vending in person with people. So anything that makes it easier for me, um, to sell, is a big plus for me, just personally. Um, because I'll do it more. I will, so even if I'm making a little bit less money, as long as the margin is still good enough, um, uh, I I tend to prefer, because I know myself and I know that like if I have to like sit and list all these things and do this consistently every day for months, like I'm gonna burn out. Like I'm just not gonna enjoy it and keep doing it. So I think finding, I've been trying like ComC a little bit for some stuff. There are some other vaults and some other platforms and selling things that I've been trying to kind of ease that. And then what happens is then I know what I have to buy things at in order to still make good profit on these types of things. Um, I don't know. So personally, that's what I'm kind of like toying with and playing. I don't do this full time. I don't do this as a business. This is supposed to be like a fun, enjoyable. Like my goal is to make like on just the flipping business to make like 40,000 a year, like in a fun way. Like if I can do that in a way that does not drain my energy too much, and if that sounds appealing to you, I think when you're if you're trying to fully scale it, a huge business, I would obviously be much more interested in what Dan has to say about, do these things make sense for someone who has the time that Dan has and the amount of time that he actually spends, doing this. I don't know. And then obviously like what the different fees are going to be long term in these things. I mean, I don't think we really know, do we, Dan? We have a sense of like what the different fee structures are going to be long term. A lot of these places, they start, and obviously they may have certain fee structures for a while and they may change it. And then if your business is running through that, you don't want to be too. One thing I talk to people about who are kind of newer into the space, who are starting businesses, is you don't want to be too dependent on any sort of one thing, because they can change the fee structure on you. They can go out of business. I mean,
like Troll and Toad Evo can just shut down. Yeah.
so the more you can have different, ways of doing it, and and I talk to my streaming friends too, and I've had friends who have like gotten removed from Whatnot, or like there's just lots of these, whether you're using vaults to store and sell, or auctioning, or using, selling on Whatnot, or selling to do it, like the more avenues you can have, the better. And then I think, I was answering it in sort of like a mental health perspective. Like for me to really enjoy this hobby and to have a fun time, there's certain things that work for me, and there are certain things that are just not worth the stress and the headache to make a little bit of extra money. And in fact, I'll actually lose a lot more money in the long run doing those things. Like I'll make a lot more money if I keep myself happy. I know that about myself. Like I'll be more successful in the long run and more consistent and engaged, which is often more important than maximizing everything all the time. So certainly from that perspective, I think vaults could be attractive. And again, I'm trying COM-C, for example, right now as an example of one.
I haven't talked about it yet, but I'm using COM-C too.
Oh, you are? Oh, we've never talked about that. Okay.
I think they have 8 million listings.
Yeah.
They have 8 million cards. They do graded, they do raw. I got in trouble by some people talking about Evo, and there are some people out there convinced that I killed Troll and Toad Evo by making YouTube videos about it. So if I make a COM-C video, it'll be dead in 2 years. No, as a business, I'm a one-man operation, except for the fact that like Troll and Toad Evo, I mean, I've sold cards through James. I've sold some amount of cards through Nick. There are consignments are very, very valuable services, even for people who do this full time, to just know your area of expertise, know where you add the most value to yourself, to your business, and then like outsource some of it that you just can't do yourself. And but yeah, at some point I'll probably talk about it a little bit more publicly, but we'll see how and when. Another thing I wanted to add on the vault is something I use too. I kind of got teased into it with the teaser rate free vault promo. I sent my cards to the vault during the boom, during the crazy bubble, when I was underinsured for what I had, and some amount of it was just getting stuff into an insured space. I think underinsurance is an issue in this sphere, but I have videos on that. I won't delve into that too much here. But one thing that changed is in the time that I sent to the vault and now now I'm full time. Now I'm looking for more inventory, again, the convention and all that. And then eBay vault is on the horizon. So I just think that will fit in better when it comes into my strategy.
Yeah, and I certainly have used these things mostly for ease of selling, but definitely two big reasons why my friends have used it. One of my friends travels a lot and actually is a little bit of a nomad and doesn't like live anywhere that long. And it's been amazing for him to kind of store his collection, have a central place to easily sell. And then if he ever does settle down more in a place, so people do have their lifestyle things. And then obviously, to Dan's point as well, which is a good one, the safety of not getting robbed and it being both insured if something did happen. And then also in I imagine a fairly sophisticated situation.
Yeah.
As far as difficult for thieves to access. Okay, next question. I tried to bring this discussion on Discord, but it didn't get much track, and it's something I'm really interested in. What could be considered inside the top 1 to 3% of the hobby regarding this 3 parameters at the same time: condition, rarity, and demand? Cards that come to mind could be Charizard Basic First Edition, Charizard No Rarity, Rayquaza Gold Star. I suppose that some promos will be included as Pikachu Illustrator, but I don't know promos sufficiently to understand if they have enough demand to be placed in that top 3%. Okay, so what's considered the 1 to 3% of the hobby for you? What are the and maybe to take this in a sort of speculative space, what do you think will be that 1 to 3% in the long run? What are the types of things that you tend to look for, if you can answer that?
Yeah, for me, the best of the best would be just early WotC, Japanese limited promos, and I guess not just Japanese, any limited like known print run, known distribution promos that are very, very low. Think art academies, think championship cards, trophy cards, and then like base set first edition booster box. I think that one fits in there. Whether mid-era sealed EXD Axes boxes, PSA 10 Gold Stars I think would fit. PSA 10 Shining first edition. PSA 10 Shining Japanese. Those are like just a handful, probably not fully inclusive, but I think those would be, they definitely fit condition and rarity. As far as demand, the main demand will always be like ultra modern as far as the absolute quantity, but that generally does have like, it's weird because right, if a base set first edition PSA 10 Charizard were $1,000, not everyone, but a lot more people would want one. Part of the reason like they're not transacted so frequently is because there's so many less of them. There's only 110, and the price is just way outside. I mean, I do this full time. I am never going to buy a PSA 10 base first edition Charizard if it's hanging out around $250,000. I just don't have that capital, and so I wouldn't say that the top 1 to 3% of the hobby really falls in. I mean, maybe it falls in within demand, and that's why the price is where it is. But maybe I'm just overthinking that aspect of it. But yeah,
Well, demand, yeah, I mean, demand is a function of, yeah. Anyway.
price is a function of demand. That the price is so high because the demand. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I guess a way to take this is, do you feel like there are things within the 3% right now of prices that won't be, or that surprise you, or things in the future that aren't, that could be? Like, that would be an interesting way to take the question for you, because I think most people would answer it that way of like, the stuff that is right now is mostly the stuff that probably will always be. That's certainly probably the most likely thing. But, do you think there are some things that come to mind that seem kind of like that? Why is that in that 1 to 3%? And then some things that you're like, why is that not within Pokemon?
I'm not one to like to point
I
out
know you're
specific
not.
things, but like if I have to, I mean, I think I've mentioned this in a different live stream or in a podcast somewhere, but like, and I think it's a lot of overlap with you. Like the Trophy Kang, beautiful card, awesome release, historic, limited, like it just feels like higher than it should be for whatever reason to me. The Unicarp is another one that just feels like higher than it should be. Should it not still fit in it? Maybe it's in the top 0.5%, and I think it should be at the 3% or something. Like it's kind of.
I think those are clearly within the 1% of the 1% anyway. Either
Yeah,
way.
like those are still very solid, but they feel
We're including
overvalued a
energy
little bit.
cards. I don't know what we're including here, but I'm imagining we're
Yeah.
including energy cards. So I would guess the top 1 to 3%. If we want, let's put a dollar number for sake of the conversation. Maybe it'll make it easier. I would say anything maybe over 1,000 right now. Let's just say.
I think there's way too much ultra modern that's in that price range that shouldn't be and won't continue to be. But again, I could be wrong. That's just me. Some of the some of the PSA 10 brand new stuff is just mind blowing to me, and I don't think that will perform well if you're buying those things at an investment. I mean, whether it's Japanese or English, some of these $1,000 PSA 10 alt arts right out of the gate, not even alt arts. I mean, just some Japanese trainers, and it's pretty crazy. Some of the prices out there right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand the Japanese waifu cards, for sure. And I more understand the alt arts, even the ones that are the most expensive than those. This is just me. This is not what I think. This is not like, this is us just like hanging out, sharing how we feel. This shouldn't be like taken as friggin' gospel here. We're just two guys who have opinions on the hobby, right? Like, for me as a collector, someone who like, what do I desire? What do I think's the coolest stuff? I don't understand. I also don't understand why things like I think there's a lot of Japanese promos, fairly modern, from 2014 on, let's say, that are wildly overvalued.
Honcho
And
Pikachus and everything.
those are some of the better ones. I still think that they're very, very expensive, but at least some of the Festa cards. I don't like the 2016 Festa just because it's 2016 and maybe it has Pikachu on. Like, I don't know. I don't get it. And I would be concerned that in 20 years, if the hobby is still really successful, let's say there are 50,000 of those in the world or 100,000 of those in the world, why are those going for so much more than the Masakis when there's probably a lot more of those. I don't think there is an important of a release in terms of like historically in the time period as like the Masakis and the sort of golden age stuff. Now I could absolutely be wrong, because maybe in the long run, who cares about Masakis, and 2016 is like a really important year because it was Pokemon Go and a lot of people came back. This is why you just we don't know. Like, we don't know what's going to be cool and what people are going to think is great in the future. Right now, there's certainly, and some of the sort of criticisms on like the experts in the hobby sort of determining that like some of these things are valuable and some of these things are extremely valuable, like there although there isn't like in most cases at least like an agenda there is a reality that like people who have large collections, people who have large followings, their opinions have an outsized effect on the market. What they like has an outsized effect on the market, and in the short to medium term, what the Pokey Revs and the Leon Harts and the Essen Pratts and the Garys of the world think and feel about certain cards has an outsized impact in the short to medium term. In the long run, their opinions may end up not being the majority of people's opinions, and it's like time will tell of these things. And you guys know my answer to this stuff is I try to look to other hobbies for answers, like what trended and what became valuable in other hobbies. But that doesn't mean that this hobby will behave the exact same way as those other hobbies. There's always a probably more than a decent chance of some of that happening, in the long run. But it's always best if you're investing to buy something that you feel is extremely undervalued, not to be buying something that you feel like, yes, it's extremely expensive, but like this will be the best thing. This will like this random promo from like 2006. I say random. I always put these things down, but this promo, even if it's beautiful, and I think it's the most beautiful looking promo in the hobby right now. This promo will, stand the test of time because I think it's cool looking, or I think it's just that good looking. That's risky from a collector's perspective. That's totally legitimate, but from a trying to make money, I think that's risky. So those would be the things that would pop out to me. And then maybe, I think there's always risk on sort of some of those like low pop cards, super low pop cards from the middle era that might be selling for $1,000 to $3,000. If more of those get graded, I think on the Japanese side, you're seeing some cards in PSA 10 get to $1,000 to $6,000 that I think I'm not sure should be in the top 1%. How about stuff that you think isn't in the top one? We always say negative things. Is there anything that you think isn't in the top 1% to 3% that you think should be, or you think will be in the long
run? This is probably one that I would even less like to share than the other.
No one's gonna listen to this. The answer can just be no.
Yeah, I don't have anything that jumps out at me and screams that it needs to. And honestly, if there was, it would be like everything else is gonna fall to make that into the the 1% to 3%. Yeah. What about you? Because this is the answer to the what should I buy question.
No, and I think, right, like, I'm not investing in anything, including anything I'm about to say now, because of the reasons you just said, and just the fact that I just think it's all way too speculative for me to feel confident in anything. But yeah, as far as like what do I think? I think like maybe some X and Y full arts that are $400 to $600 that may end up being super low pop. Like first appearance, we talked about this in Discord this week, actually, like first appearances of like popular Pokemon as the first ever full art of that card. Like, I think that's a better bet than alt arts being important. I think full arts being important is a way better bet, because I think they're going to make lots of different types of full art, alt art. So I think key full arts of key characters that maybe are still in the, $300 to $600 range, maybe should be $1,200, and some of the other ones I talked about should be $300 to $600, but it's vice versa, like in my mind, right? None of this stuff I think should be $3,000 or anything, but relative. I think Hidden Fates is a set that may be really great long term. And I guess it's just a question of just how much of that was printed, and was there just too much printed forever? but I think like that's a set that people just like burn themselves out on. There was tons of it. People opened a ton of it. People opened that for like literally a year. I feel like like the same people over and over and over again. That's that's a set that I think is really stands out. I don't think Evolving Sky stands out at all. And this is just my blunt opinion that's very different than the hobby. But like to me, Hidden Fates is a set that really stands out as like a very different than all other sets. I don't think Hidden Fates is similar to anything in the hobby as far as that many shiny and really focusing on the shiny identity. And I just think shinies as a chase make a lot of sense really long term in Pokemon, and that'll be the first set with many Pokemon's first ever shiny card. So I just think, but again, there's so much of it printed. Should it be in the top 1 to 3%? You know, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But maybe there's, you know, I think if Pokemon does well, I just think that that's a really great set. And people are just bored of it. Understandably, I'm bored of it. Like, you have to understand though that like you're gonna get bored of things, and then if you stay long enough, and if enough of it disappears, you're gonna miss it. You're gonna want it again. Like the stuff that really stood out, I think. That's about it. That's probably the only set that I feel that way about, that really stands out from the past like 5 years for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny when Crown Zenith came out. I saw a couple like Reddit posts that people shared. I saw a couple Facebook posts that people shared where some people were almost getting like, and maybe I read this with a certain bias. Maybe I was reading a tone that wasn't there. Some people who seemed heavily invested in like alt arts were almost getting like nervous that so many beautiful full art, alternate art style. Well, those aren't alt arts. Those are Galarian galleries. We need to make sure that like there's a distinction because these are not the same. And artists will art. That's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of beautiful cards out there, and there already are.
Whenever you feel that energy, you know, it's just people pumping up their own what they own.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's fine. I think it's just it's important not to fall for that sort of thing. And I know obviously people here tend not to be attracted by that sort of thing, but it's understandable. I mean, it's attractive when people say like super confident things. Like I'm sure this, like, you know, it could be persuasive, and I get that. Yeah, a set like that just doesn't have an identity to me. Like, I think it's a killer set, Crown Zenith. It just doesn't have the identity of like a Hidden Fates to me. I think collectability is so much about, one thing I think is so important is, and probably a lot of you guys, some of you guys have heard me say this before, a lot of you guys have heard me say this before, but I'm trying to formulate it this way now, that like, I think a lot of people in collectible hobbies who are new to hobbies think that time is your friend, when actually time makes most things irrelevant, not more valuable. And that the most important thing is that like attention, and that things need to stand out. And so the more time you pile onto something, the more options there and time there is for people to forget about it and not care about it anymore. And that's true with the entire Pokemon hobby. That's true with cards in general. But if you want to buy into the fact that won't happen to cards in general, and that won't happen to the Pokemon hobby in general, then it becomes, well, what things will stand the test of time? And then it comes down to, what do you think people are underestimating? What are the sets that feel like they may stand the test of time that other people don't think will? And then those would be the ones that I personally would bet on if you were able to find stuff like that. I think what's hard in Pokemon is that it's extremely optimized, and so there just isn't that sort of, I don't see that investment potential in a lot of this stuff. Again, I think Hidden Fates could do really well long term, but it may take a long time. I'm just not sure. I would be very surprised though, like if Pokemon does really well over the next 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 years, and like Hidden Fates just had so much more supply randomly than other things, which is possible, and or it somehow gets like left behind and no one cares about. Like I don't think that's going to happen. based on my experience in this hobby and like other collectible hobbies, the way people kind of circle back to things.
Yeah.
All right. So it's 10:15 now. We do have a couple more questions. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. Otherwise, we're just going to kind of do the last few questions here and then begin to wrap up. Does that sound good, Dan?
Yeah. And Thrifty wanted to know if we watched the Golden Netflix show yet. Did you check that out yet?
No, Sarah, my girlfriend's gonna watch it with me. She agreed, so we're gonna sit down.
I intend to watch it, but I've not yet watched it. I'll probably watch it at some point over the next few weeks.
Does Thrifty like it? I don't know if she said. I don't know.
She says if you're a 90s basketball fan, you're gonna love it. I don't know if she enjoyed it, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be entertaining.
Yeah, for sure. Card content is great.
After that, Nick has a question at 10:06 p.m. What are your thoughts on the upcoming 151 set? Do you guys think Pokemon is reprinting base set too much, or is it something they're going to do every couple of years for the new people coming into the hobby to be able to experience? They're gonna milk it as long as it performs for them, and it's still performing for them. So yeah, I mean, Jake has talked many times about reprints of reprints of reprints and how in other hobbies and other TCGs and other collectible categories, they don't historically pan out. And Pokemon is like the one that they keep doing pretty well. But like that said, Evolutions is tanked. The singles, the sealed is still an anomaly. But anyways, I think they'll continue to print that base set Charizard, that base set Pikachu, all those cards we know and love. I love those cards. Those cards are like, they capture my peak nostalgia. So the 151 set is cool. It's gonna be, I don't know too much other than to say like it's interesting to me. I plan on partaking it in some amount because I think there will be liquidity and I think there will be flips there, long-term investment potential. Yeah, I would tend more towards like the actual original ones, the actual more historic ones, but that's about all I've got for that.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. I mean, I think you and I tend to feel the same about most things, really. um, and that I'm not, as you said, it'll be fun. I'm kind of a sucker for these types of things, but particularly if there's like, how much new art there'll be, and I think I need to look through the set. I think there's some pictures up. But is it reprinting the arts, or is it all new? It's just I think I think it might be all new and not reprinted.
I
But
think
maybe
they use the hollow, like the regular arts, but they're making them hollow. I'm one that doesn't like to look at spoilers that much, but I have seen a couple images dropped in Discord. I think because I think I saw like a base set Charmander, same artwork, but like almost like an evolution style, reimagined, slight differences, and then like hollow, like all of them are hollow, I think.
okay. I mean, this is like, again, like when you're investing in mass produced stuff, like they're just going to make more of it and it's just going to be shinier and better. Like I don't know why the Pokemon company wouldn't do this and continue to do it and make, for everything that's popular. It's just sort of a matter of time. So yeah. But I'm excited. Listen, I also I want things to be cheap so I can open it and have fun too. Like, it's frustrating when everyone's investing so much too and stonking so much on stuff, because it would be fun to just it'd be fun to be able to engage more naturally in a lot of this stuff as like a collector first, and to not have to worry about the high price points or like the money I could potentially make if I flip it, these types of things. So, selfishly, them doing some reprints or some sets that maybe that maybe there isn't as deep of demand, or because they've done it too, it's not, to me, it's not the worst thing in the world. And I think I also think it's good for the hobby to have, again, this is not so much the question, but it's good for the hobby to have stuff that's not so super expensive, even though what scares me is that people then seem not to want it, which then is like, do people even like it? It's like, then it's like when stuff becomes cheaper, I buy more of it and open more of it. Like that's my relationship with opening and engaging in this, not less. And it feels like a lot of people are just kind of chasing money, and they're still in that sort of like new investor sort of like phase of like, oh, did you pull that expensive altar? It's the money that's exciting, not necessarily like the card and putting it in the I don't know. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see kind of what the vibe and what the feel of that set is like.
And Thrifty does say the premium box is reprinted base with gold borders, and I believe they're hollow.
Like the whole set. What do you think? All right. I don't even want to know, honestly.
Yeah, I'm not positive because I try to not interact too much with spoilers. I like to just that's one thing I say I like about MetaZoo. I just like open the set and experience it for the first time.
Yeah. Okay, I think Reeks probably has the last question for tonight. Reek says, do you guys believe the hype for Japanese booster boxes in the West is authentic and will last, or is it a product of short supply of English product in an earlier release schedule? Back in 2016, 2019, I feel like Japanese mono product in the West wasn't talked about and was only really transacted with those deepest in the hobby. What are your thoughts on Japanese sealed product?
I don't really know. I mean, I'm interacting with it now, and I hadn't back then. Some amount of it is because I haven't gained access to like Japanese distribution, but I've gotten access to better channels for it, and there's money there. So I'm transacting with it as a business because there's money there, but also that's probably part of why it's going on, right? Like I'm one of those new guys in the West that wasn't interacting with it before, and now I am a bunch, and I think things will just ebb and flow. I know some amount of collectors who just collected Japanese because it was cheaper and more accessible, and now that it's gone the other way, I think some amount of those people are probably switching back to English, like right? Like I don't know. Demand and all that can be so fickle, and trying to project what it's going to do. I just I know I can't, so I'm not going to try. But to say whether it's authentic or not, I just have no idea. I think there's some amount of authentic going on and some amount of investing going on. Generally, I think I think today's market is generally less authentic than it was 10 years ago. But I think anyone would be able to agree to that some amount more investing in that kind of stuff is going on. But how much more? And is it too much more? And is it all is the house of cards gonna fall? No idea.
Yeah, and I use that word authentic to describe these things too, but I'm trying my best to like replace that with of course the demand is authentic, it's happening and the prices are what they are. It's why is the demand there, and then is that sustainable, right? And so is it like, why is that demand there right now, and is it sustainable? And I think that we see this pattern. There's clearly a ton of money slushing around our society, okay, slushing around the world, and there's a ton of people investing in Pokemon. I think I think the majority of collectors are probably investing in Pokemon to some degree. And what I mean by that is they're interested in the money. They're excited by the money. I think probably the majority of the openers of the people who are opening packs and going for the rush and the hit. And so these things have like a cascading effect of like something becomes more expensive, which makes it now much more fun to collect, much more fun to open, much more fun to chase the stuff, because now I can like make money and it's going up, and that's exciting. And then that pushes the price up and up and up and up and up. And then eventually it plateaus, people lose interest, people move on to the next thing, it just becomes too expensive. And then it's sort of like, well, what happens to it? And we've seen a lot of singles crash, I think Hidden Fates and Evolutions are really good examples of this, on the English side. On the Japanese side, I am not super engaged in that market to the point where I nor do, I mean, even most of the people who are like super engaged in the market don't really know the print. I mean, I was talking to a guy who, you know, probably a decent amount of you guys know, but at the last Collecticon, who deals primarily in Japanese, massively in Japanese sealed and primarily in Japanese. And he has some really good insight, but he doesn't know. Like, and if he doesn't know, I certainly will. I certainly don't know. And I just sort of go back to the same type of like psychological, arguments, which fundamentally are, I think, correct about all markets, right? And the way that value and price explodes and grows. And so you have to ask yourself, at what part of the cycle do you think they're at? Do you think there's more room for that to continue? And as far as Reeks's point, or the argument that that the English got too expensive, it priced people out, and so they wanted to go somewhere else. I mean, there might be some truth in that, although I mean the prices of that might have caused maybe some of it initially, and then when the prices started going up, maybe then it was more about making money. I don't know, Dan. It's the chicken or an egg with some of that stuff, but
Yeah.
it's definitely interesting to think about. And I have answers for myself, I guess. And when I view this stuff, I feel like it's in a bubble of sorts. And modern and sealed in general is in a massive bubble that's just been getting bigger and bigger. So, that's my feeling. And why I think that is just because I just think that like so many people are coming with unrealistic expectations of this stuff, and I don't believe that will sustain itself. I don't know how long that's going to take, but I think it's inevitable for the sort of attitudes to shift and change. I think a lot of people, I mean, even Rudy, someone like Rudy, who's just this perma bull on like sealed product in particular, in everything, and just buys massive amounts of it. Like, it's interesting to see like how Magic has just been a disaster in sealed product. While Pokemon's been doing well. And so it's just sort of like the money just seems to chase where the success is. And there was a lot more success in Magic before. People were making a lot more there, and Pokemon was flat for years. No one made any money. People just lost money on modern sealed for years in Pokemon. And so nobody invested in it. And now there's a ton of people and it's, I don't chase that. I don't chase the irrationality and the greed and frankly the hubris and the overconfidence and the ego. That I think when people start making money, they start having sort of a delusional sense of their abilities to continue to make money and predict the future, and that sort of just feeds the mania more and more and more. So
yeah.
And as Dan says, like, he doesn't invest in any of this. He's flipping and reselling and making money and constantly looking for margin. And that's what I've been doing and what I will continue to do in Pokemon as well. If that changes, I'll let you guys know. Like, if there comes a point, and again, I mean, even a year and a half ago to 2 years ago, I was picking up some Worlds promo. Like, there were occasional things that I would pick up that I felt were potentially, undervalued. But now I look at the scene and I say, as I said, maybe Hidden Fates, maybe some Sun and Moon, maybe some X and Y full arts. I think that like WotC is like really attractively priced for collectors. That's, I think it's, I don't look at that and I don't think it's like insanely priced. I think it's like super attractive prices for collectors. I'm just not sure the narrative of WotC is going to shift so much that you're going to make such an incredible return on your money on that, like it might on things like X and Y, and that like full, like trying to find a more niche sort of specific narrative thing that might really go up in value in a hurry. I don't know. So that looks like it's about it for tonight. Any last minute thoughts, comments, things to share? Dan, or anyone else?
I don't think I have anything. As I always do, I'll get this uploading overnight and I'll have this posted tomorrow. For anyone who hopped in late, you'll be able to catch up on what you missed. I guess one thing I meant to mention towards the beginning that I guess I'll just mention now. I did recently move it. Your videos, every time you posted, they used to go into the announcements. I've shifted it so that both yours and mine, the bot was broken for a while, or I forgot how to use it. I don't know what it was. But anyways, the bot is now posting our videos in the support Pokenomics channel. And that's where like I do see a lot of people just freely posting. We don't really do like allow self-promotion, spamming, things like that in the other categories, the other channels. But if people are going live, if you're posting a YouTube video and you want to share it in there, that's like, it keeps it all in one spot. So ours will be posted by the bot, and then you can feel free to post yours as well.
Yeah, and I've never talked about this openly, but like my feeling about that is like if you want to do some self-promotion, go for it. As long as like Dan and I feel that you are here to like help people learn and support and grow. If I
Yeah.
get the feeling like you aren't friends with any of us
And
and
just
you
spamming links in every channel.
and you
Yeah.
join the Patreon just to launch your channel or launch your business, that would be the only time that I would ever bring that. That's my personal feeling on it. Dan and I have never even really talked about this. We just kind of were super laid back about all this type of stuff. And there's never been an issue, in my experience. I've seen people that I've seen people, post their stuff sometimes, and sometimes in a way that's like definitely self-promoting. And I'm cool with that. Like
Yeah.
I want you to promote yourself and grow. I would just ask everyone to be super respectful of people and that like give value first. It's a very
Yeah.
cliche thing to say, but it's like don't come don't try don't if you're coming to anywhere and you're sort of like I'm going to take as much as I can from this from other people and all sorts of things, like you're not going to be super welcome for very long. But if you come with a different attitude, like we want you, like if Dan and I, this Patreon, anyone can help you grow your business, grow your channel, grow whatever, like that's just exciting. Like that just totally feels great to me. So and I
Yeah.
think Dan feels the same way. So
Yeah, we've had like non-existent need for like moderation as far as like punishing people for being naughty. Thankfully, I think we had one bot, one person's account got hacked or compromised or whatever, and we had a little bit of moderation needed for that. Other than that, like it's been a super great community, super great Discord to manage, and not requiring much management. But I did just
yeah,
want to I did want to point out, and maybe I'll put together a video of some sort, and then I can drop that in announcements. I think a lot of people just don't know how to navigate Discord very well, and I think one thing a lot of other Discords do, and I'm in a lot of them that do. A lot of Discords just overly use the everyone tag, and a lot of people like overly use the announcements, just announcing 20 things at you every day. And I mean, that's one criticism the MetaZoo one gets a lot, and I do think it's actually valid. We don't spam the everyone tag. We don't overly like abuse. I would just ask that people like leave everyone unmuted, because like if we're doing that, it's like an announcement. Hey, the Zoom, it's this and that. But we do have the roles channel if you want to react to those roles and get pinged for the individual announcements. Other than that, everything's pretty smooth in there, I think.
all right. Well, on that note, we appreciate you all for hanging out with us tonight. Yeah, and appreciate, I very much appreciate, I mean, a lot of the people here in this room, like you guys add so much value, and I see you guys constantly sharing useful things with each other, both here and then obviously like in other Discords and just like around, and it makes it a pleasure to like be doing this. And I'm sad I'm not going to Dallas to see a number of you guys, but I know
I was just gonna say, yeah, section
I know you guys
15.
are gonna,
I was looking up our sections. Come say hi at section 15.
yeah. For those who are going, definitely hit up Dan, hit up other people here. I'm sure there'll be some good get-togethers that these guys will organize. Probably, I don't know if people are if you're all staying in a hotel or Airbnb or whatever, but I'm sure they'll be definitely take advantage of that and try to, totally normal to be shy and, but people are super friendly and inclusive and, definitely, take the plunge if it's something you're interested in and, meeting people in person. So.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. It's gonna come quick. 5 days.
All right. So I guess that's it. I have not made videos on my channel in a while. For any of you guys who have noticed, I am going to start making videos shortly again. It's been
Videos or lives?
probably lives, maybe some videos. I'd like to make some videos again on some topics again. It has been the busiest few weeks I've had in a really long time. I am thoroughly exhausted. There's multiple projects at work and multiple projects and weddings, and it's just been like literally insane. So I apologize. It's not because I don't want to make videos or want to interact with people. I do want to do that again. So look out for those. Dan's been regular, so definitely continue to support Dan and hang out there. We got our office hours, 1 p.m. on Tuesdays for me, although I've had to reschedule it a couple of times recently to 4 p.m. But hopefully I'll get back to 1 p.m.s.
I rescheduled one, but I'm Thursdays at 9, I'm pretty sure. Thursdays at 9 p.m.
And if you run into anyone in the Discord who's having an issue with office hours or an issue with something, as people who are like more engaged, if you can help them out, I see that sometimes, and like I really appreciate it because sometimes Dan and I don't see, Dan's a lot more active than I am, but he doesn't see people asking something like that, and just letting people know when they are and all that type of stuff is amazingly helpful. So on that note, hope everyone has a good rest of their night, and we'll see y'all. We'll talk to y'all again soon.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.